If you're reasonably happy about the content on this channel, then okay. I guess that's not really a good reason to stop watching anytime soon, but I'd rather talk to you directly now if you're in that subcategory of viewer who's ever so slightly cranky about something I might have said, or even better, quite cranky, bordering on downright outraged. Your comments are the best, and I double dead dingo's donga dare you, dude, to have at it in the comments feed right now. And I'd love to tell you that I promise not to care, it's all water off a duck's back, it's not going to make any difference to me kind of thing, but I would be lying to you if I said that, because I love that crap. To me, that is the creme de la creme of comment de la comment. And you should have a crack, dude, because if you do, you might make it into a list of comments just like this one the next time I do one of these episodes. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au, new cars cheap but Australia only website. God. I've got 14 comments for you today, but hey, only 13, like a baker's dozen of bona fide nuts. One comment interspersed, I hope it'll be obvious, is actually a guy with proper metallurgist runs on the board, pointing out how spectacularly wrong I was in 2 videos ago when we covered nutserts or riv nuts, tomato, those threaded insert thingos that you put in thin gauge metal to give you a better chance of a set screw biting in and staying on so that you don't have to resort to a tech screw, because nobody deserves that. We'll get to that in due course, but first, here's an entertaining missive from user alphanumeric unpronounceable. God, you babble a lot. Could have included some pictures of the paint fail or rust. Let's see. It's cans and common for a shitload of flying foxes up there. A vehicle can be crapped on anywhere parked in the street, shopping or at work, so it makes no difference if it is garaged at home. Their crap only has to be on the paint for 5 to 10 minutes to eat into the paint. Their crap is way worse than burrs, but both have acid. Flying foxes eat fruit and it produces stronger concentrations of acid. You get that crap on your paint job, you get it off ASAP. And not just hose it till you cannot see it, use some car wash. Thank you so much for that incisive review of my Rusty Roof Ranger report just a few days ago. Dude who had a small amount of time in a Ranger and the roof just started falling apart and the dealer attempted to throw him under the bus. I thought that was editorially relevant, like it had newsworthiness and merit, so that got a run, but no pictures because I relied on, silly old me, relied on the official QCAT judgment PDF, which tends to be in words as opposed to pictures, so sorry, dude, I had to run with the assets I had on hand there. And if I might be so bold as to offer some assessment of your fine contribution to the show at this point, I would suggest, respectfully, that you might have spent far too much of your life thinking about shit, categorizing shit, examining the chemical composition of shit, the pH of shit, particularly as it pertains to the species which might fly over cars in cans. I appreciate that everyone is called to some vocation, but I do find your calling a little curious. Doubtless it's made you number 1 in number 2s, and I would therefore advise you to start your own fine channel and website, shitexpert.com.au, on the slim chance that it is available and Alborz doesn't already have that one.
Yeah, mate, and it's nice and warm up here in Cairns at the moment while you're freezing your huge ass off down south. Cheers. beer emoji.
Just 2 minor points on this one. A, real men do not need emojis, and therefore we eschew them because we prefer to use actual language to move a concept from one mind to another. That's a pretty Jedi concept for a Queenslander. Speaking of which, B, Queensland, where you have sun and banjos. So do say good night this evening to Ellie May and Jethro and Cletus. Won't be too hard, you'll all be in the same bed together, I'm sure. Just try not to squeal like a pig too often in the middle of the night, for the sake of the neighbours and because, very bad for the larynx.
Get on with it. Honestly, I could cut this video down to 3 minutes and still get to the point.
Another one on Rusty Roof Ranger, Fred Nurk. Please do, Fred. I would love to see that. Show us all how it's done, son. brevityexpert.com.au might still be available. There's a slim chance. Albor's is quite thorough. But when you get it done, Fredo, do send me a link. I would be delighted to review your raw, on-camera sex appeal. Today's video is brought to you by Sonax, of whom you may previously just not have heard. They're mainly a specialist car care operation based in Germany, but here in Australia, they're a family-owned small business importing and distributing the product and just trying to carve out a niche for the brand in a pretty congested marketplace, trying to get ahead, people like you and me. And they've got a secret weapon. Don't get me wrong, their car care stuff is great. I'm just a bit of a grudge at washing the car because I like a clean car, but I kind of hate washing the car, so I do it under sufferance. But I'm tremendously enthusiastic about the secret weapon, which is this stuff, SX90+. I won't take up too much of your time, but it's multifunctional oil in a can, like aerosolized lubricant. And it's so much more effective than some of the competitors that I would previously have reached for routinely. And I've been using it now for well over 6 months, and it's my go-to lubricant. Mainly because a lot of the competitors are mainly solvent. And that means when the solvent evaporates, you don't get much lubrication left behind. Not so much with this stuff. This stuff is awesome. And one of the other things I love about it is it's got the integrated tube thingo in the nozzle. Like, there's your precise spray. Here's your broad spectrum application. You never lose the tube. You've always got the precise spray for reaching up here and doing whatever. Gives you another little bit of reach. You don't have to muck around sticking a tube in a little nozzle and breaking it off. It's fantastic. And it does a really good job at corrosion protection. And I can tell you that because we just had one of the humidest summers on record, and now we're having a really wet winter. So everything made of bare steel in this joint has one salient feature, and that is it just rusts. And this stuff is a very effective corrosion protection. There'll be a link in the description. You get 10% off using the code. You want to bear in mind that if you go over the minimum order quantity threshold at sonax.com.au, you will also get free shipping, which changes the economics of the acquisition of something like this quite a bit. And if you're the sort of dude who uses this stuff a lot, you can get it in a 5-litre pack as well, so you can put it in a trigger pack and spray at will. Sonax.com.au for more on that. Their car care stuff is also great, but this SX90 Plus is fantastic. Check out the description for the discount code. You'll get 10% off. I got a 2018 Kia. I put a little ding in it, the front passenger mudguard, took the paint off to the bare metal. Did not worry about it. 6 years later, still no rust. But it is a Kia. Ah yes, that bare metal. I do love a bit of bare metal on a long drive in the country. I think everyone does. But in your case, Glenn, which kind was it? Yogi or Humphrey B?
Never enjoyed watching an infomercial so much.
somewhat harsh super skills. I find it difficult to believe that a punter could watch that entire nutcert video and not get just a kernel of useful whatever out of it. You might be that guy, however, and if you are, please accept this prize, a carefully curated, hand-picked, barbed wire enema from me to you. It's just my way of saying thanks. I'll slip it in the post, so to speak, this afternoon.
Rivet nut style vernier. You're finally speaking my language, JC.
Jason. It breaks my heart at this critical juncture in our relationship to tell you that my tongue and your tongue are unlikely to be cellmates anytime soon, because we don't speak the same language, dude. This is a vernier caliper. It came to light in the RivNut report, and it's a really versatile piece of equipment. The batteries never go flat. You can easily measure dimensions to 0.1 of a millimetre, like 100 microns. And then if you want to try really hard and put your glasses on, you can measure to 20 microns, which is beyond the accuracy, precision, whatever necessary here in the home ghetto, right? Very seldom do you need to measure more precisely than that. And the batteries don't go flat. So there's that. But it's a vernier by virtue of this bit here, which is a vernier scale. There's an inch one on top and a millimetre one on the bottom, right? That's what makes it a vernier caliper, is the vernier scale. This is a very sexy piece of kit, a Mitutoyo, I think, dial caliper. Okay, but it's not a vernier caliper, it's a dial caliper. And the reason it's not a vernier caliper is there's no vernier scale, dude. There's vernier scales on lots of things. Lots of scientific instruments have them. There's a version of that on a micrometer, obviously. Even something like this marking off gauge here, which is, you know, you just slide it in and out, line up the marks, clamp it off, and then you can put your whatever job there and get your scriber and hold it up the right way and mark things off with it. It's awesome, and you can get that easily using this little vernier on the bottom here. You can get that set to 100 microns worth of precision easily also. It actually is a vernier by virtue of this little vernier thingo down here, but unless it's got that magic little manual vernier scale, it's not a vernier anything.
Oh dear, the Bunnings boys have discovered RivNuts. Will be fun to see the results.
Here, Stuart, and what could possibly go wrong? I cannot wait to see the on-road epidemic of bull bars, recovery points, and even winches rivnutted to the OE plastic bumpers on Land Cruiser 300 and Hilux. That really will be something to see. Your videos are always interesting. I want to add information to this video, though. I am a metallurgist and was a consultant to many of the auto companies now retired. RivNuts are just amazing. I agree with aluminium to aluminium, zinc-coated steel to steel, but placing stainless in contact with the typical steels found in cars is a real corrosion problem. The stainless will form a galvanic corrosion point with the normal steels. I've seen this many times and demonstrated to numerous OEMs using corrosion testing. It would be better to use the zinc-coated steel ones with body panels. Only use stainless RivNuts into stainless. Thank you very much, Morris. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to set me straight and the record straight on that. Because in the RivNut video, I did erroneously say that aluminium RivNuts with aluminium applications, zinc-plated steel RivNuts with interior applications on steel, and stainless steel RivNuts with exterior applications on vehicles and trailers and things of that nature. Obviously that's wrong, and I would be crazy, like flat out crazy, not to bow to the greater experience and qualifications of somebody who actually knows what he's talking about there after doing the testing. Okay, so I'm sorry I got that wrong. I'm not above making mistakes, and I always do try and set the record straight when that happens. The important thing here, though, is that Morris is not fitting into this segment. It's because he is the odd one out. He's going to have to try harder to be a nut, and frankly, I doubt that he has what it takes. Is this whole video one long sponsor segment? So, where is the notification? I'd give you a pass this time, but you know exactly what you're doing. A final thumbs down emoji, and now you are -1 sub. Normally, I'd be gutted, pushy porn, but my give a fuck tank is on E, and I really have no more shits to give to individual complainants, especially fake name emoji users.
Mate, I've been using them for years now. I'm just wondering if you can me a idea how to sink punch the metal so the riv nut sits flush on the bolting side. I've pressed a divot in sheet metal on my bench press to achieve it in the past, but I'd like to know what you could come up with. Thanks, mate. Thumbs up.
Enough with the emojis, for fuck's sake, dude. I think you can get countersunk flange riv nuts for flush mounting applications, so there's that. And failing that, instead of punching the sort of counter bore, you could actually bore a counter bore if the thing you're bolting up is thick enough. So you could just measure the exterior diameter of the flange and the thickness of the mounting flange on the riv nut, and then just get like a slot drill or like a 2-fluted end mill and just bore counter bores into the thing that you're bolting up on the mounting side, and then you'd get it to flush mount. When does the expert make an appearance? At your house? Never.
I was an industrial arts teacher and I taught welding to middle school kids. I covered all the dangerous stuff, galvanised, electrocution, fumes, but I did not know about the brake fluid. Thank you so much for a great video. Love your common sense and your down-to-earth language.
You're welcome, Anthony, but let's just set the record straight here, son. Cleanliness is next to godliness with welding, and all sorts of contaminants are bad. Some processes are more tolerant of contamination than others. Brake fluid, like the actual fluid in your brake lines, I don't think there's anything specifically terrible about welding with a bit of that on the surface of the metal, and that's not what I said in that how to die welding video, right? What's really bad is brake cleaner, not brake fluid, particularly the chlorinated brake cleaner, the stuff with perchlorate or tetrachloroethylene or whatever else they call it, carbon tetrachloride, another name for it. It's really bad to have that stuff on anything that you weld, because when you heat it up to 300 degrees C, it makes phosgene gas, which is a certified chemical weapon. And that's not how you manufacture the chemical weapon, but you can make enough of it unwittingly by welding something that's been cleaned with chlorinated brake cleaner. So don't use chlorinated brake cleaner, A, ever, and specifically B, on anything that you plan welding. The best thing to clean anything down for welding is acetone, because it evaporates and leaves no residue. We still see phosgene accidents in the news. There was one in 2010 in the States, and then there was another one, I forget where, in about 2016. And then just last year there was I think it was a railway derailment and a fire when a big container of carbon tetrachloride went up, and I'm not sure what the injury toll was from all of those, but you don't want to turn your welding bay in your shed into a de facto phosgene factory, mainly because it's a deadly chemical weapon, and B, there's no frickin' cure. So don't do that.
So how common is it that people weld close enough to brake fluid and then die from it?
Brake cleaner, dude. The chlorinated stuff. We just did that. Try to keep up. I've met goldfish with longer attention spans than that.
These guys don't know that thousands of tungsten pellets travelling at very high speeds are used in weapon munitions against Russia in Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Overnator. I did talk the other day about that idiot who... He's a popular idiot, though, so well done him, who dropped a ginormous 20-kilo tungsten cube onto a Tesla Model S. And I'd have to say two things about that. One, tungsten is used a lot in munitions. People don't get that. And the other thing people don't get is that mechanical engineers, like some huge proportion of them, 30 to 50% of all the mechanical engineers on the planet just spend their lives designing more and more entertaining ways to kill other humans. So there's that. And tungsten is so good at that. It's used in armour-piercing munitions often. One I read about, which was fascinating, in Ed Macy's book, Apache. He's an Apache helicopter pilot. Are these tungsten darts that they fire at armoured personnel carriers and tanks and things of that nature. So there's a 18-inch long, like 450 millimetre tungsten dart, and it's got a big slug of copper, like this stuff, in the guts of it. So it's a tungsten dart with a big core O copper, and it comes out of the helicopter and on a rocket, and it gets itself up to, I don't know, Mach 3 or Mach 5 or something, and then it impacts the whatever tank or the APC, and the delta V on impact, the tungsten goes through the armour, but the delta V of the tungsten, like the change in velocity of the tungsten, is converted into heat on the way through. The tungsten shatters, and the heat conversion from the delta V liquefies the copper, so that if you happen to be a poor bastard inside the APC, you get sprayed with all of this molten copper, which is highly innovative and also gobsmackingly terrible all at once. I would like John to clarify how, at the speed of light, mass is not equal to infinity. Really, I am curious. Mass increases the closer you get to sea, so that at sea mass has to be infinite, which is why travelling at sea is impossible. Please elaborate. Don't just assert. By way of example, John might like to give us what the mass of a man, generic gender, of 100 kilos at rest would be at sea. Cow sweat man. Yeah, imagine that. And he is such a regular commentator in packages of this nature on this fine channel. So thank you for your tireless efforts to entertain Cow Sweat Man. This looks like a job for Cow Sweat Man. Said nobody ever in a crisis. I did make the mistake of talking about relativity on the channel. I knew it was a mistake, or maybe I just wanted to extract a new breed of nuttery in the comments. Anyway, I knew I would get this blowback. Mass doesn't change. It doesn't matter how fast you go. If you're 100 kilos sitting on your fat ass in your fat cave, you're going to be 100 kilos at 99.999% of the speed of light. There is no change in the mass, ever, okay? But there is a thing called relativistic mass where this quaint piece of fiction derives, okay? Now, if you really want to deep dive into this, you can look up the Lorentz factor, which is named after a dead Dutch dude named Heinrich Lorentz, who croaked in, digging deep here, 1928, aged 75. This is named after him. I don't think he developed the Lorentz factor. I think out of respect it was named after him later, but don't quote me on that. Anywho, what we have to do to understand this, if you really want to bend your brain, take the red pill and figure out how the universe really works, then you have to go from Newton's physics to Einstein's physics. Now, if you're a school kid or something, or you're at university studying engineering, like I was 40 years ago, then you learn Newton's physics and you don't have to worry too much about Einstein's physics, because Einstein's physics is kind of the same when you go slow. All of Einstein's brainiac stuff turns into Newton's stuff when you go slow. And by slow, I mean, like, if you're only doing 100,000 kilometres a second, probably doesn't matter. You don't have to use Einstein. You only have to use Einstein if you're going like really fast. If you're doing 3 laps of the Earth in a second, then like you're the Flash or something, then yeah, it really matters. But it's like this, okay? You know momentum, right? Momentum makes something hard or easy to stop. So if something light like this 1, 2, 3 block is moving really fast, it's hard to stop. Or if something heavy like a frickin' container ship is moving really slow, it's got so much mass and it is moving that it's really hard to stop. And if it runs into a bridge, as happened recently in America, that's kind of bad, isn't it? So, you know momentum. Like Newton said that momentum equals mass times velocity. And this is true. It is. And then Einstein kind of had a look at that and said, well, it's more complex than that when you go really quick, because momentum increases exponentially up the way you look at it, up this end of the graph like this, really steeply. But you have to be going so damn fast for it to matter. Nothing humans do is ever impacted by this change in momentum. Maybe at the Large Hadron Collider, or you got a particle accelerator in your shed, maybe. But what we're really talking about here is universe type mechanics stuff. It doesn't have too much of a practical application in the shed. So the way it works in the Einstein realm is momentum is mass times velocity times this thing called gamma, which is the Lorentz factor. And the Lorentz factor is just a complex mathematical equation with only one variable in it, velocity, and it's 1 for all mundane things. It's 1 to like 20 decimal places. So they just drop it for Newton type stuff, building bridges and bullets and tungsten darts with copper cores that kill bloody armoured personnel carriers, because it's not relevant. But if you're going to travel like at relativistic speeds, it really does matter, okay? So if you're a student going to university and you learn theoretical physics, they can dick around and talk about the Lorentz factor and calculating that and turn the momentum equation into 3 variables, which is Lorentz factor, mass, and velocity, or they can just group Lorentz factor, the gamma thing, and mass together into a fake, not fake, but made up construct called relativistic mass. It just bundles up mass and the Lorentz factor together neatly into a mathematical thing so that you don't have to think about Lorentz factor and mass as being separate. But they are separate because in reality, the mass of something never changes. It doesn't matter how freaking fast you go, 99.99999% of the speed of light, if it doesn't change the mass of your 1, 2, 3 block. It's pretty hard to make it go that fast, but this whole pop culture nature, this notion that the mass increases with the speed is bullshit. It's abject bullshit. The mass never changes, but the momentum increases exponentially. And when you bundle it up to teach a whole bunch of newbies about relativity, it's much easier just to wrap it up in a neat little package and call it relativistic mass. But relativistic mass only exists in chalk up on the board. It's got no relevance to the mass of anything, irrespective of how freaking fast it moves.